Wow, so Lawrence Okolie has failed his drug test, his VADA drug test, ahead of his clash with Tony Yoka on Saturday night in Paris at the Adidas Arena. Queensbury announced this only an hour ago or so this is breaking news. Wow, Lawrence Okolie has failed his VADA drug test. This is just oh my god. Wow, Lawrence Okolie has failed the drug test. This has been brought to us by Queensbury, breaking news this morning, and ahead of his clash on Saturday night with Tony Yoka, which I was really looking forward to. So, a couple of things. He's come out with a statement in response to Queensbury's, VADA have let Queensbury know, Queensbury let the public know. Now, Lawrence Okolie has spoken out only a few minutes ago saying that, he had an injury to his bicep and he had treatment for it, and that's the reason for the adverse finding. And he's hoping that some common sense prevails and that before everyone starts saying that he melted the cup and because his size is such a drastic shift that he went from cruiserweight to heavyweight and he's so big now, before they start speculating, he's saying, I had treatment for an injury, it's obviously returned an adverse finding, let's all just calm down. So usually the way it works, when an athlete fails a drug test, there's a number of reasons why this could be. So we'll unpack this first. So the obvious reason is that they're using PEDs and they find traces of a certain drug in their system. But you'd have to be an idiot to take something like stanozol or clenbuterol and think that you can get past a VADA test. Now, there's documentaries, if you look at Icarus, the documentary on Netflix not so long ago, where there's obviously ways around this and people can mask substances. Is pretty easy. So the other reasons that would interfere with a test or result with an adverse finding would be the overconsumption of a certain food or product or supplement, cue eating too many eggs. Then there's contamination of food or a product, cue Mexican meat. So I don't know if everyone's catching what I'm picking up, but anyway, and then there's also just natural changes to the body. So if you have, you're not sleeping well, you've changed your diet drastically, you have some sort of underlying medical condition that would, raise your cortisol levels or something, that can also mess with the findings. So I'm going to go with, and a lot of the times, like once you fail the test, that's the problem with boxing and combat sports, is once you fail the test, it's on your record. It's a blemish that you cannot get rid of. It's a stain you can't remove, and you'll always be known as somebody who potentially was using performance-enhancing drugs. Now, I don't know Lawrence Okolie, but I like Lawrence Okolie. I think he's a gentleman. I think he's an honest guy. I love his story, his come up. He's an Olympian, bronze medalist. He's a former world champion, and it's tough in the heavyweight division. But I always thought that he had the size and he could put on the weight naturally to be able to compete. And he's a strong guy, but I mean, he does look big. You have to be a real monster of a man these days to if you look at the likes of Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, not everyone's as skillful as Alexander Usyk from a pure boxing standpoint. But, you got Martin Bakole, you got really big, Zile Zhang, for example, Filip Hrgovic, massive guys in terms of stature and size. And I always just thought Lawrence Okolie could naturally get to that position. So he's failed the test. I don't know whether or not it's just the A test, it should just be the A sample. So now they will test the B sample to find out what's really going on. So I think that might be a bit of a deeper test, and we will find out imminently, because there's supposed to be a fight on Saturday night and it's Tuesday. So now the conundrum is whether he fights or not, what happens to Tony Yoka. So they'll need to find a replacement, and I don't know any top tier heavyweights who are just sitting on the couch at the moment waiting for a call. A lot of people have been engaged to fight at the moment. A lot of people are formally engaged. So, Tony Yoka is either going to have someone imported that's just not on his level, and it's not great for a headline show. And then there's Bakary Samake, who is the chief undercard or the kind of co-main event. So he would probably be elevated to the top position of the card, if they can't find a replacement to Tony Yoka. What does this happen? What happens to Lawrence Okolie? I'm sure he's on the call at the moment with Frank Warren, and his team are probably communicating with some lawyers to find out what happens, because this could be a massive problem for him. And it's really sad, because I think he was just at a point where he had a good performance against Tony Yoka. He smoked him, knocked him out, soundly beat him. He would have been in line for some big fights, and it would have just been a natural order of progression, because he's always had to kind of clamor for attention and fights, and he's chasing people like Agit Kabayel around, going to Germany and such. So now he'd be in the prime position where they almost he'd have to be given a fight. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section. This is a loaded topic, obviously loaded. But yeah, if you pro Okolie and you think that he's on the safe side of this and it's just all a big mistake, or if you think there's smoke, there's fire, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, everyone, have a good day further.